Hey everyone, it's Ashley. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be focusing on watercolor brush mark stamps, and I feel like they're very trendy right now. I've been seeing them in a lot of stamp sets, and I really love the way that they look. Just with ink, you can make it look like you've watercolored on your cardstock, and I think that's really cool. There's a couple of ways that you can use them, so I'm going to go over two of my favorite ways today, and one is dry ink and then one is wet ink to resemble a little bit more of watercolor. So let's just go ahead and jump right in. I'll be using both of these watercolor brush mark stamps from the Catherine Pooler Eat, Sleep, Create set, and this is from the new Zen Garden release. You can see the one here on the right is a longer, thinner one, and the one here on the left is sort of a shorter and thicker brush stroke. So as I said, for the first card, I'll be using the longer, thinner brush stroke. And I have a piece of cardstock here cut to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. I will end up trimming that down later to 4 by 5 1/4, but I wasn't quite sure where I was going just yet. These grid lines are etched right into the acrylic block, and they make it very easy to line up stamps like this to make sure that they're straight. You can easily see if it's a little bit crooked, and then you can just do some adjusting there. I try to make this as straight as possible, and I'm going to be bringing in a piece of scrap paper here, and I'm going to be using the Midnight ink, which is just a very dark black ink from Catherine Pooler. I go ahead and ink that up, and I'm just going to stamp all the way down the card, and I try to make them as evenly spaced as possible, but perfection is not the name of the game on this card. So I'm just going to create this really bold, contrasting background. So that's the entire background of my card. It was super easy, super simple. It took about 2 minutes maybe in real time. And what I really want to do is make a large contrast on this card. So I'm going to be using this Concord 9th flower set. And it does come with stamps to stamp into it to make it look watercolor as well. But because we're doing a dry watercolor look on this, I decided that I'm just going to go ahead and color it in with Copic markers. So I'm going to ink it up with Memento ink, which is Copic safe. I'm using my Mini Misty to make sure that I get a good impression. This is a fairly large stamp, so it's easy to not get a good impression throughout the entire stamp. So I want to make sure that I can do it a few times to be sure that it's nice and full and dark and complete. So here I'm just going to color in the flowers and leaves with some Copic markers. And I'm not the best Copic marker colorer, so I'm not going to go into too much detail about what I've done. I will put in the colors that I've used in case you're interested, but I really just like to play around with Copics. I like the way that they look. They blend pretty easily as long as you have the right colors to blend to each other, but I just don't want to give you any tips that are incorrect. So I generally go from darkest to medium to lightest, and then I go back around with the darkest and then the lightest again. And I'm nearly done now. Here's the finished product. And now I'm just going to be cutting it out. And this is where investing in dies really comes in handy, because this took quite a while, but I don't have the die, the coordinating die for this set. So I went ahead and fussy cut it. And As I was almost done, I realized I probably didn't need to cut out every tiny little thing because I just wanted it to come from the bottom left-hand corner. So I went and marked it where I would like to cut it off from, and I just made sure that I didn't go and fussy cut that corner if I wasn't going to need it. I put some glue on the back, and I'm using this piece of scrap paper again just to make sure that I don't glue it to my my work pad or my work mat. So I really love this contrast, which I also think is pretty popular at the moment, this black and white contrasting background with the colorful flower coming, just peeking through. I really have liked that design lately. And to cut off the extra pieces, I'm going to be using this paper trimmer, and I like to use this one because it has a very clear line to show you exactly where it cuts. That way I can make sure I get very close to the paper without cutting or very close to the cardstock and the card front without actually cutting it. I'm going to be adding the sentiment "Hello Lovely," and I don't want it to pop too much, so I don't want to add any banners. I'm just going to ink it up with Versamark ink, and first I'll prep my cardstock, ink it up with Versamark ink, and then I will emboss it in Ranger Gold embossing powder. And that's pretty much it. I am going to add a little bit of embellishment, and to adhere it to the card base, I'm going to be using a foam tape to give it a little bit of dimension. I add some Nuvo crystal drops, and there you have it. That's the entire card. For my next card, I'm going to be using the shorter, thicker brushstroke. And because this is obviously a bit smaller than the other brushstroke, I can use this round etched grid acrylic block, which has the same etchings in it to make sure that you can make it nice and straight. I have a piece of Strathmore cold press watercolor paper here, and this is cut to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. I'm going to be using Garden Party, Lime Ricky, Grass Skirt, Seafoam, and Spruce. And the reason that I have all of these is because it's going to make a bit of an ombre look, and Seafoam is a bit lighter than Grass Skirt and it has a different sort of undertone to it, but it works. For this wet technique, you're going to need a mini mister or some sort of water misting tool or water spraying tool. I'm going to ink up the brushstroke stamp with Garden Party first, and I won't show you every single one, but I wanted to give you an idea of what I'm doing. So I'm just protecting my work surface with a towel, and I'll be spraying water directly onto the stamp, and I do 3 sprays. You can see that it's wet, and so when I stamp it, basically it's just going to transfer this ink that's wet onto the watercolor paper, and then it will look like an actual watercolor brushstroke without actually using any brushes or any watercolor. I'm going to wipe all of the ink and the water off with that towel. It's a microfiber towel, so it doesn't leave too many things on the stamp. And you can see I can also create some interest with the piece by moving it around and allowing the color to move around the paper a bit. I'm going to repeat this action with every color, and you'll see a few times that I feel like I want to stamp it again, and that's okay just to place it right over, and it doesn't have to be exact like you would normally to stamp on top of an already stamped image. I believe this one, I just wanted it to be a little flatter, so I went ahead and stamped right over it again without re-inking or putting any more water on it. And now that I'm nearly finished, just to help speed up the drying process a bit, I'm going to take my heat tool to it because I'm a little impatient, and that's the entire background. You haven't used any watercolors, you haven't used any brushes, yet it looks beautiful and like a piece of art. I've already die cut the word thanks, also from the Catherine Pooler Zen Garden Release collection, and I'm going to place that right over that ombre watercolor square. And because I want the background to be a little bit more interesting, I'm going to take grass skirt and ink blend all over the edge around my card base so that it looks like it's on a green piece of cardstock. And I'm adhering that to the card base with Tombow Extreme Permanent Adhesive, making sure that it's directly in the middle and that all of the edges peeking through are equal on all sides. I'm going to apply the thanks with Multimedia Matte, and that's it. That's the entire card. It only took a few minutes to make. It's beautiful. It looks like you spent a lot of time on it when really you didn't. I hope that you've enjoyed this. Let me know if you decide to try it, and I'll see you soon. Bye.